Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping straight into some really intense, fast-moving developments in global geopolitics. We're focusing squarely on a region that, well, it always seems to be grabbing the headlines. Our mission here is simple. Cut through all the noise, the complexity, and give you, our listener, a really clear, informed understanding of this escalating conflict. We're talking Iran, the U.S., Israel, specifically the events just from June 22nd and 23rd, 2025. It's been a whirlwind.
It really has. And, we've sifted through a ton of top-tier news updates, analysis, research. The goal is to distill the critical stuff for you, so you get the impactful knowledge without feeling, buried in information. We're going to try and unpack the layers here, reveal some perhaps surprising details, connect some dots maybe you haven't seen linked elsewhere, so you get not just what happened, but crucially, why it matters.
Okay, let's dive right in then. The big event, this joint U.S.-Israeli offensive, codenamed Operation Midnight Hammer. Pretty dramatic name. So June 22nd, the U.S., working with Israel, launches these precision airstrikes and the targets. 3 major Iranian nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan.
Right, the big 3 enrichment facilities. And this was definitely not, a minor raid. We're talking scale here. The reports mention over 125 aircraft involved. That includes B-2 stealth bombers.
The ones carrying bunker busters.
Exactly. Designed for deeply buried, hardened targets, plus submarine-launched cruise missiles. So it's a multi-axis attack, clearly designed to overwhelm defenses and, well, inflict serious damage on those specific nuclear program sites.
President Trump came out pretty quickly, calling it a spectacular military success, said the sites were obliterated.
Strong words.
Very strong words.
But, okay, beyond the rhetoric. What do we actually know about the impact? And importantly, the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, they reported no off-site radiation increases. Is that the final word on safety? Well, that's a really key point. The no off-site radiation is certainly good news for the immediate area. It suggests containment held, at least initially, but it doesn't necessarily confirm obliteration. Assessing the actual damage to those underground facilities, that's going to take time. Weeks, maybe longer. Intelligence assets will be working hard on that.
Okay.
And it's also crucial to remember, this didn't happen in a vacuum. Israel had already ramped up its own strikes since mid-June. They'd been hitting various Iranian nuclear and military sites, missile infrastructure, even targets near Tehran. So this was an escalation upon an already tense situation.
Right. And there's this other layer, the covert stuff. Reports suggest Mossad, Israel's intelligence agency, conducted some kind of drone sabotage before Midnight Hammer kicked off, apparently taking out maybe up to 30 mobile missile launchers and command sites. That sounds significant.
Oh, absolutely significant. If true, it's a classic intelligence move. Degrade the enemy's ability to retaliate before you launch the main attack. It's about shaping the battlefield, preemptively neutralizing threats. It might even explain perhaps the nature or scale of Iran's immediate response. Maybe some of their more mobile, ready systems were already offline.
Interesting. It shows that interplay between covert action and overt military strikes.
Precisely. Intelligence paving the way for kinetic force. It's a hallmark of modern conflict, really.
So Iran's nuclear sites are hit hard.
Yeah.
The inevitable question then becomes retaliation. How did Tehran respond?
Almost immediately. They launched missile barrages targeting Israel. Reports vary slightly, but around 22 to 30 missiles, enough to trigger widespread air raid sirens in places like Tel Aviv, Haifa, major population centers.
And there were injuries.
Yes, unfortunately. Dozens reported injured. Thankfully, initial reports suggest no fatalities, likely due to Israel's air defense systems, but still a serious impact. And Tehran, as you'd expect, vowed comprehensive responses. They've made it very clear this isn't the end of the exchange.
And part of that threat involves something we've heard before, the Strait of Hormuz, a major choke point for global oil.
Exactly. Iran's parliament has apparently approved a measure. It still needs higher ratification, mind you, but the intent is there. Close the strait. And there are already reports of Iran disrupting GPS navigation in the strait. That's a disruptive tactic short of a full closure, but it signals intent.
Just remind our listeners, how critical is Hormuz?
It's incredibly critical. You're talking about roughly 20% of the world's total oil consumption passing through that narrow channel every day. Maybe close to a third of all seaborne traded oil.
Wow.
So yeah, a closure, even a partial disruption, has immediate and massive implications for global energy prices and supply chains. It's Iran's biggest economic leverage point, really.
And what's the word from the top in Iran?
No.
Ayatollah Khamenei?
The supreme leader, yeah. He emphasized that Iran will decide when, how, and to what extent it responds. He's signaling strategic patience, perhaps, but also determination, and notably, strongly signaling reprisals specifically against Israel. So the focus seems to be there, at least for now.
And we should probably mention, even before these latest strikes, there was that incident on June 19th. A Sagil missile hit the Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba, Israel.
Right, that was a very concerning development. Hitting a hospital, injuring civilians, forcing evacuations. It definitely raised the stakes and crossed a line for many observers, even before Operation Midnight Hammer. It showed a willingness to hit civilian infrastructure.
Okay, so let's widen the lens a bit.
Mhm.
How has the rest of the world reacted to all of this?
Well, predictably, Russia condemned the U.S. strikes. That fits their geopolitical stance, opposing unilateral U.S. action and supporting Iran to some extent.
And other major powers, China, Europe.
A chorus of calls for restraint, basically. China, France, Germany, the UK, the UN, all urging immediate de-escalation. Everyone recognizes the danger of this spinning into a much wider regional war.
The potential ripple effects are huge.
Absolutely. And you see practical reactions, too. India launched Operation Sindhu back on June 18th, even before the latest strikes, to get about 110 of its citizens out of Iran. It shows how quickly countries move to protect their people when things look like they're about to boil over. It's not just diplomacy, it's logistics and contingency planning.
And the markets. You mentioned Hormuz. How did oil prices react specifically?
Sharply. Brent crude jumped about 4%. U.S. crude went up around 4.3%. That's a direct market reaction to the fear of supply disruption, especially that potential Hormuz closure.
So immediate economic jitters.
Yes. And militarily, U.S. bases across the Gulf are on high alert. Embassies have warned personnel about increased threats. It's a region-wide security clampdown, essentially.
Now, turning back to the U.S. domestically, this seems to be causing some waves, particularly around the messaging from the administration itself.
That's right. There seems to be a bit of a divergence. President Trump publicly hinted at wanting regime change in Iran. That's a very ambitious, very loaded term.
Right. That implies a much bigger goal than just dealing with a nuclear program.
Exactly. But then you had Defense Secretary Hegseth stating quite clearly that the strikes were aimed solely at the nuclear threat, not about regime change.
So, conflicting signals.
It certainly looks that way from the outside, and that kind of ambiguity can be, well, confusing for allies and potentially escalatory for adversaries. What is the actual U.S. objective here? Is it limited or maximalist?
And how's it playing out politically within the U.S.?
Pretty much along party lines, as you might expect. Republicans, by and large, seem supportive of the strikes, framing it as necessary action against an imminent threat, strength, resolve, that sort of thing.
While
Democrats are raising serious questions. Constitutional concerns about launching significant military action without explicit congressional approval, the whole war powers debate again.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme.
It is, and also strategic concerns. The risk of getting drawn deeper into another Middle East conflict, the potential for unintended consequences, the lack of a clear long-term strategy.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize this. We've got military strikes, retaliation, global jitters, internal U.S. debates. What are the biggest immediate risks moving forward? What does this all mean?
Well, the economic risk is front and center. That Hormuz threat isn't abstract. If Iran acts on it, you'll see fuel prices spike globally. It could destabilize economies still recovering from, other recent shocks.
Beyond just gas prices, though.
Oh, absolutely. It's about supply chains, inflation, overall economic stability. It could force a hard look at energy security worldwide. Then there's the risk of the conflict widening. Iran has proxies across the region, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq and Syria. They could activate those proxies to strike U.S. or Israeli interests or allies like Saudi Arabia or the UAE. That pulls more players in, makes the map much more complex and dangerous.
A multi-front conflict, potentially.
Potentially, yes. And finally, back in the U.S., that political fallout will continue. The debate over war powers, the long-term strategy, the cost, that's not going away anytime soon, especially if the situation keeps escalating.
It really underscores how interconnected everything is. The military actions, the economy, the diplomacy, domestic politics.
Exactly. It's never just one thing. Each action creates reactions across multiple domains. Understanding those ripple effects is key. It challenges us to think beyond the immediate strike and counterstrike. What are the second and third order consequences for energy, for regional alliances, for the balance of power? It's a complex web.
Absolutely. A really volatile situation unfolding incredibly quickly. We've tried to break down the key events of just the last couple of days: Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's response, the global reactions, the U.S. picture. The gravity is clear. The implications are wide-ranging. So the final thought, maybe, for you, our listener, to ponder. Given this rapid escalation, this complex web of players and proxies we've discussed, what could the long-term implications be for global